Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. This is an interview about the book From the Ashes with the author Jessie Thistle. One of the best books I read this year, hands down. It's an incredible memoir. I'm a huge memoir fan, so this was right down my right up my alley, street, whatever that saying is. Jessie, so thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. The way that this interview will work is I will read a very short bio, and then I'll give you some time to introduce yourself um, and your book, and then we'll ask some questions and go from there.
All right, awesome.
All right, so Jessie Thistle is a Métis Cree Scott PhD candidate in the history program at York University in Toronto. He also teaches there as an assistant professor, where he is working on theories of intergenerational and historical trauma of the Métis people. This work, which involves reflection on his own previous struggles with addiction and homelessness, have been recognized as having a wide impact on both the scholarly community and the greater public. So, Jessie, if you could just tell us a little bit about how you got into writing and your own personal story.
Well, I'm a recovering addict, former homeless person who used the justice system as a way to re-educate myself and make an impact in terms of education. That's where I started my educational journey. Yeah, and so I just followed that through to university and did my best. And now I write reports and academic journals and books to help in the field of homelessness. And out of this grew my memoir. You know, it was just me actually doing my AA fourth steps from back in rehab. I would record all my different kind of resentments and things that were driving my addictions, and I just wrote them down into this book that I have. And so I didn't really even expect anybody to read it. You know, it's for me to figure myself out.
Well, it's an incredible story, and like I was clapping, absolutely applauding you at the end of it. You must have had so many people reach out to you since publishing.
I get it every day. I get like people that say that they see their story in it of addiction and recovery. I've also see people that contact me for help with family members that are struggling with addiction and homelessness and mental health issues. And I try to offer help where I can, but I'm not a psychologist. You know, I can just offer my own personal experiences and what I know in the field of history and addiction studies. And I just offer what I can. So I get calls all the time, you know, all the time.
That actually must be slightly overwhelming because you have a full-time gig at the same time, right?
Yeah, it's a little, I'm not juggling very well. I'm a new professor. So just trying to figure out how that goes, right? How to teach and reach students and make it interesting. I'm in the middle of a major book tour that's going really, really well. It's going way better than anybody thought it would. So with that comes gigs. I have to go across the country and talk to people all the time and present my work. And so I have these two parallel careers going on that I'm trying to juggle right now.
It sounds actually high stress.
It is. It is. I'm surprised I still have hair. You know.
You look pretty good.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
All right. So it's such an interesting to talk to somebody who has written about their personal story, because you really, really do have to leave it all in here. How hard was it to write about something so personal?
It was very kind of, I wouldn't say difficult. I would just say engaging. And I knew that if I didn't put it all out there, um, that people would sense that something was missing. So I put everything that I had into it, all the like darkness, all the joy, all the human connection, the love, you know, as well as the tribulations, like the real life. My life was at risk in a lot of places, so I had to really just put it out there, and because I think people can sense when you're not telling everything. So I just knew that if I didn't do that, that it wouldn't connect the same way as if I put everything on the table. So that's what I did.
Well, it's certainly a very good read, so you did something right.
Thank you very much.
Now, your friends and family are included in the book, as you would expect. Did anybody read it before it was published, or was there any concern around that, around telling kind of their story at the same time?
Well, I read my brothers their parts. I read my mom her parts. Lucy, my wife, I read her parts, and so I had to get their permission before I could publish because I am telling the story of me and my two other brothers, and it's important that they, consented to me talking about some of the sensitive material early in the book. Uh, there are other people that I couldn't get permission from, like all of the church lady. I couldn't go and talk to her because she's just doing her thing. And I told the stories in a way that it wasn't disrespectful and I didn't try to malign anybody. I just tried to show what happened. So in that respect, I think I walked a fine line, to talk about these really sensitive issues and to involve real people. And I tried my best.
Now, how is your relationship? I don't want to give too much away. It is a memoir, so we can talk about the content without. I was speaking to a psychological thriller author earlier this week, and we literally couldn't talk about the book at all. But with memoir, it's a bit different. So, how is your relationship with your mom and your brother today?
Oh, my mom and me are getting along great. She loves the book, and um, we didn't have each other in each other's lives for a long, long time. And so sometimes I'll just call my mom and we'll just laugh, you know, because like that joy, when you love somebody and they're not in your life, when it's missing for so long, all you can do is just have like tears of joy and laughter, and we make fun of each other, and it's kind of cool. She's got a great sense of humor. My brother Josh loves the book as well. He's out in Vancouver with my niece, and she loves it too. She's read it, and so I'm connecting with her in a way that I couldn't if I wanted to sit around a table and try to explain what had happened to
Mhm.
Uncle Jesse. And that's also it's also making her want to become a writer.
Oh,
And
wow.
I didn't think of that unforeseen consequence that it would fill her with the hope that it is possible for an Indigenous girl to be a writer, and that's wonderful. My brother Jerry and me, we don't really talk too much right now. We do love each other, but we're like the Noel Gallagher and his brother, like Oasis. Those two brothers fight all the time. Well, that's me and Jerry. We've always been like that. So there's periods where we're together and periods where we're not talking. And this is just one of our rough patches right now. So,
Fair enough, as we all have them with siblings.
yes.
Now, you talk about being Indigenous, being Métis. How important is that in the story? And initially, you really didn't know your roots or understand them, and you've really come a long way since then. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, yeah, without giving him too much away, it's central to the book, like me not knowing who I am. Uh, there's very common theme for people of my generation. I'm a little bit older, and so people from my generation were scooped and put elsewhere, and then just raised without their culture, and so that's important. And also, like coming to know myself as an Indigenous person was really healing. I figured out that I'm Métis Cree, that my family's important to the historical narrative of this nation, and that we weren't all the negative stereotypes that the media portrays of us. So me coming to know myself is central to the book, but it also isn't. I wrote the book in a way that I just talk about us Indigenous people like we're everyday people because we are, right? And like I like Conan the Barbarian, and you know, all the things that everybody else in my generation liked, like wrestling, and I don't know, I was just a regular guy, and so I tried to write it that way, and I think that's refreshing because it wasn't combative, and I wasn't trying to write it through this lens of anger. I was just trying to put out what had happened and let people make up their own mind about my story.
Yeah. When you do talk about your genealogy and like the ancestry, it's like so fascinating that like the background and how you must have been so enticed to find out more when your aunt was telling you about it.
Yeah, it kind of lit a flame underneath me, and I replaced whatever negative addictions I had in my life with education and trying to find myself and figure myself out as an Indigenous man. And it kind of gave me like a second lease on life. Like, I really, really am proud to be Indigenous, and I try to bring that into my classrooms to teach Indigenous kids that come in about their heritage and help them meet their ancestors like people did with me. And it's actually a very beautiful process to help people meet their ancestors and be proud of their culture. And it's just a shame that they have to come to university like I did all these years later to figure that out.
Yeah, for sure. So when I was reading the book, I kept expecting for one instance to be rock bottom, and then it wasn't.
Yeah.
And there was another instance. Can you talk to me about rock bottom a little bit?
Yeah. Rock bottom. There's a lot of false bottoms before you actually get to rock bottom. And for me, it's literally rock bottom. Like, I don't want to give too much away to the reader, but I hit it pretty hard. And my life changes after that. I become desperate enough I know I'm going to die, first of all, and I know that I am totally out of control and that my rock bottom had severe consequences that were us forced to change because I would have died. And so, yeah, but as the reader's going through them, they all sound pretty bad, but you'll know when you hit rock bottom, like if you're reading it. And so that's really the transition point of my life. And so I know for other people, they don't ever hit their rock bottom. They keep going through false bottoms until they pass away. I was lucky enough to go through what I did, even though it's horrible. I know it's a horrible experience, but I'm grateful for it ultimately.
Well, it led you to where you are today.
Yes.
Um, your grandparents, can you talk about them a little bit? Do you think, especially your grandfather, he had quite a harsh view of bringing up children. And
Hmm.
granted, you weren't his child, you were his grandchild. But do you think that they tried hard enough?
I do. I think there was a lot of intergenerational trauma in my family, um, you know, and they're actually one of the heroes of the book. Like, what they did for us boys was heroic. And even though we had a rocky relationship, me and my grandfather, it was his strength later when I was coming out of my addictions that gave me the work ethic that I needed to apply myself and to choose better for myself and to want to be a better person. And that last moment, I won't go into it too much. It was one of the most powerful things that ever happened to me in my life. And I think about him every day. I've even got his picture on my desk right here. He's watching me. I have a tattoo on my arm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a thistle. So he's really close to me, even though we didn't really get along. We never did really get along. But I think it's because we were just too stubborn, both of us. We were cut from the same cloth.
Absolutely. And speaking about your relatives, your wife, can you tell us a little bit about her?
Yeah, my wife is kind of the most significant thing that ever happened to a guy like me. I'm from the streets and made a lot of bad decisions, but I got one thing right. And it's like the most important thing. I'm getting teary eyed here thinking
Oh,
about her. But yeah, she just came in at the right time and she gave me something that the world couldn't give me beforehand. And it changed me in every good way, you know. And she's always here. She's actually my manager now. She had to quit her job, and now she's my manager and helps to do things for me logistically because it's overwhelming when you got a successful book. Just like it's like a tidal wave of love that hits you, and so she's helping me navigate those waters, and she'll continue to do that. And, so I love her a lot.
and you guys actually knew each other when you were much younger.
Yeah, I liked her when I was a kid, but I was a nerdy guy, and she didn't really take notice of me that back then. And she came in back into my life years later when I was older, and so when we were both older, and yeah, yeah.
Well, you had good taste then too.
I guess so.
Okay, well, let's change gears a little bit. Um, I've looked on Goodreads. Your rating is amazing. I mean, rightfully so. I read the book, but how much I don't know. Some authors are obsessed with it. Some authors just ignore them altogether. How important are reviews to you?
I know that they shouldn't be, but I'm obsessed with Goodreads. I go on there like daily to check and see my rating to see if it's like still holding strong, and it is. And that's kind of like a metric for me to see that look, the readers actually enjoy and are engaging with the material, and everybody reviews it differently. They connect with the story in a different way. So for me, that's like my connection to direct connection to the people that are reading, and it's so important. But I've been told it's unhealthy to do that too. So, but I can't help it, right?
I don't think I would be able to help it either.
Yeah.
Just so everybody knows, I will tell them that you have a 4.57 rating.
That's good, eh? I don't know.
Yeah, see, that's not good. That's amazing.
Wonderful.
Any book over 4 is amazing because the thing with Goodreads is it's such a fast variety of people who are reading your book and then judging it.
Mm,
So
mm,
yeah, that's really great.
yeah.
Okay, so in memoir, you have authors. Some authors produce a book every year. With you, you've now told your story. So what's next? I mean, you're obviously a gifted storyteller, but now that you've told your personal story, is there another story
Y-
brewing?
Yes, there is. I'm actually uh, working on a story with Simon and Schuster as we speak. I also do academic writing. That's where I'm kind of um, my forte. So I got a book about Métis history that's in the works. That's my PhD dissertation that I'm doing right now. But my next book for Simon and Schuster is going to be more dramatic than my own life. I can't give too much away, but it's about my great uncle and his life, and we come from a line of rebels. We're outlaws, my family, and so looking at his life, where he's closer to Métis and Algonquin history, and the effects of what we have in Canada called Indian residential school, and how that took away a lot of um, our traditional roles as men within our societies, and the effects of that. So I'm going to look at his life and show how a lot of our men ended up in prison, ended up on the streets, kind of like what happened with my life, but a little more dramatic. You'll know what I'm talking about when the book drops.
Well, I'm so thrilled to hear you're writing something else because sometimes once you get the memoirist story, they disappear. But are you familiar at all with Jeanette Walls?
Is that the one who did Glass Castle?
Yes, and then she did Half Broke Horse, which was her maternal grandmother's story.
No, I don't know that. I should look into that because I love
Sure.
Glass Castle.
Yeah, I mean, Glass Castle's a crazy
Yeah.
story, but then she actually goes on because I mean, maybe she had the same experience that she told her personal story, and then she goes on to tell her maternal grandmother's story.
Oh wow. So we have something in common.
There you
She's
go.
she's a great writer. I love
She is,
her work.
she
Yeah.
is a great writer.
Yeah.
All right. So, well, that kind of sums up the questions I have about the book, but I do have a few more questions just about yourself, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Physical book, ebook, or audiobook, and why?
I'm old school. I like actual text just because I read and I get the story and I can go over it. But I've been told that the audiobook is the best way to ingest my book, simply because I have a kind of like a slow delivery, like how I talk
Or do
now.
you read it yourself?
Yeah, and I read it myself, and
That's
that's rare. I did it over 3 days this past summer, and a lot of people have really connected to it that way because you can listen to it while driving or whatever. But if personally me, if I had to read my book, I'd probably read it on paper.
right.
That's yeah.
Well, good to know about the audiobook for sure.
Hmm.
Do you remember what your favorite book as a child was?
My favorite book as a child, I couldn't really read that well until years later in my adulthood after I went through the prison system. But one book that really affected me was Old Man in the Sea.
Okay.
Simple, basic prose, but Hemingway talks in a way that connects with readers on an emotional level. And so it's very sparse writing, and I try to like aim for that. I don't know if I connected as well as he did, but I always try to aim for that simplicity in my writing.
If you're not writing, what are you doing?
I'm marking student papers and teaching lectures and giving keynotes and just being an academic and a husband. And I have a hairy daughter, my cat, and like I really I really like nerd out with my cat. We just hang out, and that's kind of what I do. I'm a homebody. I don't go out much anymore,
Are you a television watcher or podcast listener?
Yeah, big television watcher. uh, I love The Crown on Netflix. If you've watched that, like it's great. Or museum studies, yeah, documentaries and stuff like that. I'm big into like anything historical. I love watching. Yeah.
And have you had a chance to travel very much?
Uh, yeah, quite a bit recently, since in my new incarnation of my life. So we've been down. I've been down to the States quite a bit. Chicago, Washington, New York City blew my mind first time I saw it. Across Canada, I've been to all the different provinces except PEI, and once I went to Prague, and that was cool.
So, do you have anywhere on your list that you'd love to visit?
I'd love to go to London or LA. I'd love to be in LA. I don't know, just the sunny beaches and all that. It's really, and there's something about London that I don't know, captures my mind, and I know the history of England pretty well, so I know how central it was to the history of the world, and I just like to go and see it and see all the things that I've read about.
Well, Jesse, I have no doubt that you're going to get there.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. Um, we will put any links that are relevant in the comments below. And yeah, and everybody should pick up a copy of your book because it's incredible. I can't rave enough about it. I loved it.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah,
It's an honor.
absolutely.